We call this The Tech, and we think you're going to love it.
Check out the Rocket NIF. Features a modular thumb zone area that allows you to individually place up to 12 tactical mechanical buttons. It comes with several options in the box, and you can even 3D print your own. There's also a shift button, so you can have a secondary function for every single button. It also features a hot swappable side grip, so if you're claw or palm, you should be happy with this mouse. For more information, click on the link in the description.
I was channeling my inner Tim Cook. I don't know what to say. I'm sorry.
Should we just go straight to that? The first thing I want to cry a few tears here because National Geographic is now owned by Rupert Murdoch's 21st Century Fox, and as we all know, some of us don't know, but Rupert Murdoch is a climate change denier, mainly because climate change gets in the way of his business plans. So people who deny things like that for the purpose of business really are bad for the universe. And now, see, the thing about National Geographic is I always saw it as sort of it was almost a reference book. It was like, you look at it and people see it as like truth. I think there's a mentality among Americans, maybe people in other parts of the world, where you look at National Geographic and it's like the encyclopedia. And now you can't look at it. I mean, there's been some bad things in National Geographic over the years, but there's been some bad things in the freaking encyclopedia too. Now it's I can't trust it anymore. I can't buy it anymore. It's sad. And yeah.
Apparently they've been in a partnership with Fox since 1997, so I don't know how much real change in business as usual there is. But anytime Rupert Murdoch is involved, you can just search and replace Rupert Murdoch for Cthulhu, and basically you'll get the same effect. So there is that. But, National Geographic does expect to double its investment in science, research, and education programs, with plans in the works to create a center for high school students to study geography and centers for excellence in cartography, journalism, and photography. So in terms of academic pursuits and, academic journalistic things, National Geographic is totally there. Having Rupert Murdoch at the helm for that would be like, I don't know, having Tinky Winky in charge of the National Institute for Health.
Isn't that kind of the way it is already anyway? Let's just move on here. We're going to get all the Apple crap out of the way right now. But I know some of you guys are getting completely sick of hearing about Apple, and you've gone into the woods for a couple of days. We'll talk about it quickly, then we'll move on because there's some funny stuff here. Come on, there's some freaking funny stuff like this. Surface Tension, this comic drawn by Joel Watson from this is about 3 years ago. Now 3 years ago, here's Ballmer, 2012. It's 2012 right there. You guys can check out his website; it's on the screen. So yeah, he made this comic, and there's Ballmer with the Surface, and then they're all making fun of the Surface and talking about how. Well, you guys can read the damn thing. I'm not going to talk to you like you're kids. The funniest part over here.
Making fun of Ballmer.
Yeah, making fun of Ballmer. Over here, check that action out. It's 2015, and there's Apple's Surface. Claiming they invented it. Oh, God, that's good. It's really good. That one was good. Twitter's been full of some really hilarious stuff. This tweet right here with this meme. And then we told them it's not a video. It's a live photo. That was one part that I thought was hilarious in the keynote. They always use these words, like they could be like revolutionary. And the way they say it is the way a preacher says, come on down and accept the Kool-Aid. It's like, this is not a bottle opener. This is a revolutionary top remover. Right there.
Well, just to play devil's advocate a little bit. So the Steve Jobs thing in 2007, he's like, we're going to do this phone. It's going to be the iPhone. That was like the keynote for the iPhone. And of course, it's become legendary, just like the Mac thing from the original 1987 Mac release or whatever. But anyway, Steve Jobs was like, who wants a stylus? This is not anything that anybody wants. And that's still not untrue with the Apple Pencil. I think that it's really pretentious that they're calling it a pencil because they're like, we don't want to call it a stylus. We're going to call it a pencil. It's not a pencil. Is there graphite in it? No, I'm sorry. It's not a pencil.
Yeah, it's a freaking stylus.
Yeah, it's a stylus. I mean, come on. Even Wacom calls their styli or styluses, whatever. Now that we could have a debate about.
Styli.
Yeah, I don't know.
Isn't that like a weird sport that everyone bets on in Florida?
It's like horse racing. You can get your horse racing and your stylites at the same time. No, it's, the situation with that is that your finger is still a perfectly fine user interface mechanism. And so the argument here is that it's like, well, we're still designing touchscreens for your finger, but you still have another input option. And so this won't work without, this won't work on not the iPad Pro. It has a digitizer. So it's like the Surface in that respect, because the Surface, this was one of the really innovative things that I thought when the Surface first came out. It used the Wacom Electronics, actually, which is a famous tablet maker, a very good tablet maker, a digitizing tablet, not like a tablet PC or, Apple iPad as a tablet. And the digitizer on that can detect things like pen angle and pressure and a lot of the other stuff that you would expect like from a physical writing instrument, and that was built into the Microsoft Surface. Now with the Surface 3, Microsoft fumbled the release a little bit because they switched from Wacom to Intrigue, but now that the software is very good on the Intrigue side of things, the stylus, pen, whatever, on the Surface is very, very good. And so the functionality that's in the iPad Pro is basically one-to-one with the functionality that's in the Surface, except that Microsoft has sort of perfected that, and so Apple will be able to look at that and sort of take full advantage of it. And some of the demos of the UI show that, they're still sort of building a UI for finger interfaces, for touch interfaces, but when the iPhone came out in 2007, the touch interfaces of the day there were made for using the pen. All the buttons were really tiny. It was really hard to use your finger to do stuff. And Apple's thing at that point was, let's make the buttons really big so you can hit them with a finger. I think that's still true. It's just now you can do it in 12.9 inches and you've got a pencil. But it is slightly, Apple's kind of late to the party here, and this is sort of tantamount to a thing that, when the iPad Air came out, I could not believe it did not have a magnetic connector for a keyboard. That seemed like the dumbest thing on earth. And, here we are 3 years later, and yeah, okay, it's got it now.
I think this might be really interesting for just artists out there, because, let's face it, we're not going to convince all the artists in the world to stop using Apple products. No matter how many of the t-shirts we sell, we're not going to get them to stop using Apple products. I think artists may be using this to prototype, quick prototype, some ideas and that sort of thing, or just show clients right there on the spot, hey, I'm going to draw this little thing or whatever. I don't know. There's probably lots of different applications that are beyond just using it as a traditional stylus to mark and highlight and whatever you do with the stylus. I don't think I've ever actually used a stylus and meant it. You know what I mean? Like, I've used a stylus, but I didn't mean it. I'm just jerking around. Oh, there's a stylus in my hand now. I guess I'll do something with it. But I've never used one. The
screen resolution on this is insane. And so that'll help with that. But in terms of graphics performance, Apple has said this is faster. Basically, their claims are tantamount to saying this is faster than the Xbox One, which I will take with a huge grain of salt.
I don't know. Could be, but yeah,
probably not. There's the whole heat thing. It might be faster than the Xbox One for a half a second, and then it throttles to cool itself off.
And then it's done. Hey, but does burst speed count when we're talking about graphics? I don't know. All right, let's. I think that's pretty much all the Apple stuff we have right now. That's pretty much it. The rest of it's whatever. They did their thing. It was, it's expensive. It's Apple. All right, moving right along. Barclays has 2 blockchain labs in London, and they're planning 45 experiences with the technology. Now, they already have 25, different experiments going. They're planning a few more. Guys, I'm just checking. Let's move right along.
I'm having this weird sensation that I've done this before.
You got to make sure people are watching all the episodes. There'll be a pop quiz at the end, and whoever wins will win. Let's take a look at the stuff in the store. What's that?
I said name that story that we talked about twice, because there's more than one.
And we'll send you a thing. You'll with the satisfaction of knowing you won. Albert Einstein shirts are actually doing really well. So well that the accounting people messaged me and like, hey, did you guys just spend a ton of money on shipping? And I was like, I don't know, let me check. So I called up Epic John at the store, and he was like, yeah, we just spent a lot of money on shipping, but that's a good thing, right? And I was like, oh, people like and he was like, it's all the Einstein shirt. So Einstein shirt right here, guys. And again, this is ASCII art, meaning that, ASCII art can say a lot. I'll just say that and move on. We have a bunch of new stuff that's going to be on the store like today. In fact, one of my favorite shirts ever, I told Whiskey Ranger that we need to get all of the weapons, all the really cool weapons that are original to PC gaming, and use those as inspiration to create this shirt. Now, we're going to probably do a contest where, whoever names all the weapons on this the quickest is going to win something. So go ahead and start looking at that. Maybe, that'll be your way to enter if you know all those names from all those weapons. That should be on the store right now. It's not on the store today because we filmed this thing a day early, but that's going to be a cool shirt. And we are almost out of the Dallas Skyline shirts. Let us know what you guys want for the end of the year. We're getting some really nice hoodies from the company Chrome. They ain't going to be cheap. They going to be nice, and they going to last forever. We're getting some new backpacks. So just let us know what kind of stuff you guys want for the holiday season. And we'll see what we can do about getting it onto the store. Plus, we just ordered a few more mouse pads for you. So, yeah, these are fun. All right, moving right along with the tech now. So Microsoft is downloading Windows 10 to your machine just in case. This is pretty interesting. So Windows 7 and Windows 8, if you have your automatic updates turned on, Microsoft has decided that they should go ahead and preload Windows 10. It's usually like 3.5 to 6 gigabytes in a hidden folder on your computer. It goes ahead and just loads it up there. Now, this is not just for the people who said, yeah, I'm going to upgrade to Windows 10. This is for everyone as long as you have your updates turned on. And I mean, that's a lot, but it shouldn't be a lot. But in today's internet, I guess the state of the internet, that is a lot, and it's forcing some people to go over their bandwidth cap. It's eating up space on people's hard drive, and it's just weird for people who've decided they really don't want to upgrade. Maybe they're just going to stick with Windows 8 for a little while longer and then move over to Linux when all the telemetry and stuff get ported or back ported. I don't know. So Microsoft did confirm they're doing this. So this is not like a, there's some suspicious activity. This is, there's some suspicious activity. Let's call Microsoft. Are you doing this? Yes, we're doing this. That's what this is. I don't know. Is this?
It's weird. It's not for like desktop computers. Even the bandwidth thing is kind of like, it's 4 gigabytes. Mobile devices. Microsoft has absolutely screwed laptop users. And so what is happening is if you've got a laptop that's got Windows 8 and you don't turn it it's like you use it every day. You boot it up and you do your work. What you've been experiencing for the last few days it's been running hotter than usual. The fans have been kicking up. Weird stuff's been happening. It seems like the computer's busy doing something in the background. That's your computer basically torrenting the not exactly, the Windows update in the background and taking up a whole bunch of disk space. I actually had a lot of people report that, that are on like the MiFi cards and like the mobile hotspots. They haven't been able to work because the download's been chewing up all their bandwidth because those MiFi cards and those wireless hotspots don't have a lot of bandwidth to begin with. And the Windows update's like, let's just download Windows 10. And it's like, what? I mean, I know this looks like a Wi-Fi connection, but it's still a metered connection. Those people have absolutely destroyed their 4G bandwidth caps. This was a really bad idea.
This is kind of funny. So I was talking to Pistol, and I've been saying, you know what? You're using Premiere and you're gaming a lot. You may as well go ahead and upgrade to Windows 10 because DirectX 12 and a few other things, even though there's a lot of negatives. I had to reinstall the Windows 7 calculator because it was driving me insane. I uninstalled all the native apps, so my bubbly calculator was gone, and I was like, Windows key R, calc. Oh, there's nothing there. So you can actually go do that. Maybe I should find a link to that for you guys who are frustrated with the lack of the old Windows 7 style calculator, but you can get that and install it. So her response was interesting. I've also been mentioning Linux a lot. She was like, can I just move to Linux instead? Because I was telling her, all the telemetry is going to be backported. You can block a lot of it with Windows 10, but even if you go into the host files and try to block things, the word on the street is that Microsoft is just going right around that and ignoring your host file. Microsoft's like, all that's there if you want to block other companies or if you want to do other things with IP, but it's not meant for us, so we're just going to ignore that and do our own thing. So that's not cool. I don't know. There are applications out there that do improve your security, and you do have much more security if you do not sign up to their live account, never activate Cortana, and then use some of the basic tips I did in the video, Windows 10 privacy, but it's still not up there. Now, we should probably address one other thing, because I've been getting a little bit of hate, a little bit of flack has been coming my way on the internet, because I've been very vocally against all the telemetry and basically surveillance from Microsoft that's built into Windows 10. And everyone keeps messaging me like, do you use Android? Do you use Android? You use Google, don't you? Isn't Gmail your primary server? And first of all, I'll answer that one. Gmail's not. We have our own email system that Windows set up. So we use that for our primary stuff. I use Gmail for some other things like chat and whatnot. But I don't know. Am I being ridiculous, throwing rocks at Microsoft? When Microsoft does have a pretty decent privacy policy on paper, they don't seem to be evil on paper, but they are collecting tons of data for marketing purposes or whatever. And they could potentially misuse that data. But also Google is collecting tons of data as well. And we mention it, but we haven't been as, I guess, passionate about the negative impacts of Google collecting the data. I'm just asking you right now, this is totally like not even part of the script or whatever, but I don't know, should we be a little bit harder on Google, Wendell? What do you think?
Yeah, we do. It does seem like Google gets a free pass sometimes, but for me personally, with the whole Android integration and the whole Chrome integration, it's like, oh, don't you use Chrome? Not really, not exactly, not the way that you think. Chromium is kind of nice. And there are other things that are based on Google stuff that look a lot like Google. There are situations where I will use a Google app, but it's sandboxed in a way that you may not realize. There's a really good version of Android that's a clone of Android that's not Android called Replicant, which has all the crap taken out of it. If you root your phone, there are also a ton of utilities that you can run at the command line level and basically get rid of all of the Google services and all of the Google reporting and that sort of thing. The level of integration that I do have with Google accounts and some of the Google integration and the fact that we're using, the YouTube platform for delivery, it is sort of a cost benefit analysis. It is sort of it's like, well, I can share this, but not that. But in terms of like managing privacy and managing documents and making sure that, it's like, oh, when I'm using this, I'm only going to do this with it. I'm not actually going to upload something that is like actual private real information or like other financial information or, personal information. Those services don't get any of that data. And I actually maintain about 12 or 15 different identities across different platforms in an effort to try to prevent them from like tying all of the different identities together. And I also regularly, I actually have a bot that is varying levels of broken, but is mostly operational, that actually does a sort of subterfuge type activities on some of those accounts. Because there's one bot that just randomly browses the internet. And it looks like a human being browsing the internet and just randomly clicking links. It's just a bot, runs 24 hours a day. I figure that that's polluting the analytics enough that it would be difficult for anybody to get any information out of the analytics for the programs that, have analytics reporting in it. It's like Cortana. If you're going to use Cortana and ask questions, if only 5% of the queries are actually yours and the other ones were just randomly made up queries and they're kind of believable, the signal to noise ratio there is going to be kind of high. And if I was convinced that Microsoft was doing that kind of randomization on the back end, I wouldn't really care. Google has said that they do that type of randomization and anonymization. I've also seen Google go to bat for like the marketing industry. Like the marketing industry really, really wants a lot of really super invasive stuff. And Google might have it, but Google has not given it to the ad industry, at least as far as like double click ads go and that kind of thing. And we're talking like 7, 8, 9 figure advertising accounts that are sort of plugged into the analytics platform. And they really, like, in terms of how deep the analytics goes on an individual basis, it's really not there. A lot of marketing companies rely on third-party tools for that kind of thing to actually really do the deep analysis. So it's there. The potential for abuse is there. Certainly, governments of the world can compel abuse on behalf of Microsoft, Apple, and Google. I really think that the deeper issue here is not that. It's when you have a service that could be a piece of software. So like there exists some function you want to do, let's say document creation. You can run a program on your computer to do that. That doesn't need to be a cloud service. Being a cloud service doesn't do anything there except hold you hostage. And RMS talks about this a little bit. And that's the really evil thing. It's like if you want to have services, it's completely fine to have services. But if you want to have a piece of software that could be a piece of software but is actually a cloud and a service in the cloud, that's what we got to fight against, because that is how we sort of lose control of the machines, and that's how we go sort of back to the Stone Age as far as computation goes, and that's what's bad.
Maybe one of the other reasons I brought this up is I wanted to kind of gauge interest in this sort of thing. It might be worth doing some tutorials on how to get Replicant going, how to lock down your phone. And also, maybe look at some of the alternate chat programs and that sort of thing. There are some encrypted chat programs out there, and Kane and I have been playing around with some of those. I have a few different accounts on my Android device. I use one specifically for chatting. But there's probably some information on there that I would prefer Google didn't have. You know, just every now and then something's going to be on my phone that I'm like, I would prefer if Google didn't like this. And then you have the other camp, the guys who send me emails being like, "You're such an idiot. Who cares what they know? Like, who cares? Do you really think you're that important that they actually care? Just let them have all this data." You guys do not deserve privacy whatsoever. That's all I'm going to say. If that's what you think, you guys don't deserve any rights, any privacy. If you're not going to stand up for your privacy, you don't deserve it. So that's that for you guys.
Yeah, there's no, like, I'm not a historian, but the historical perspective for thinking that way is incredibly naive. And
I mean, we can look at Joseph Stalin, right?
I'm not one to live in the past. There's all kinds of just nonsense in the past. What you got to focus on is the future. And this is a slippery slope. And where we are today and where we're headed is ultimately not a good place. I mean, Nazi Germany took it, IBM digitized the records. There was a census form. Nobody in any country thought it would be any big deal to write down your religion. That did not work out at all. And that was a census form. So, how this information might be used tomorrow is really what you have to be worried about. And we can't imagine how that might be used. Nobody could imagine that, the Nazis would take over half of Europe and use census information to kill people. But it happened. And how, the U.S. government doesn't seem to be paying any attention to the judicial branch of government. I'm sure that our founding fathers did not have that in mind. So you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah, we don't really have much of a... I mean, I guess the judicial branch kind of just enables the executive branch at this point. It's like, oh, you want to do something terrible? Okay, sure. Here's a stamp for
it's
that.
not...
Great.
It's not good when it's like, I'm not sure if you're describing a branch of a democratic form of government or like your last relationship with, some girl. That's probably, I mean, the language could apply in either case is probably not good.
Also that mentality of like, listen, if you don't have anything to hide, then what's the big deal? That's a Joseph Stalin mentality. And that's what he told people. He was like, listen, if you don't have anything to hide, what's the big deal? And that's the wrong mentality to have. It's our freedom should come first, and our security should come first, and our privacy should come first. They should be guaranteed rights. So, if you're not going to fight for that, even if you think that what you're doing is so insignificant that it doesn't matter, it's about the broader picture. So stand back a little bit, get a broader perspective, see where society's headed. See how much control the governments could have if they have access to all this information at any time, and then wake the fuck up. All right, let's move on.
Well, one other thing, sorry. George Takei was sent to a detention camp when he was a kid because he was Japanese and living in America. He was an American citizen, but he still had to go to a detention camp because he was in a database of Japanese people. And it was like, we're at war with Japan, Japanese people in America. Let's round them up and stick them in a camp. That actually happened. Let's not forget that. And so, as many, liberations or Operation Freedom or whatever the hell it is that we Americans are working on, it makes me really nervous.
Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't societally be a sin to be Japanese. And you may be thinking things like that right now. Well, it's not a sin to share a muffin recipe, or whatever you're doing on the internet. It's not a sin to do those things, or it's not wrong. But what you think is wrong is not always what they think is wrong. So, I'm not trying to be overly tinfoil hat here either. I'm just saying, like, these are the facts. You have to look at them and acknowledge that that's the way things are, and then live your life accordingly.
As an American citizen, I don't have anything to worry about unless they establish a related to Sasquatch registry, in which case I'm going to be in deep trouble.
I don't know. I'm always looking over my shoulder because I'm part Native American, so it's like, I don't know, man. Are they going to come for the rest of us any second now? Like, the weed is out? lest we carry on and talk about atrocities? They're coming for
But
me.
just because I'm in the clear doesn't mean that it's okay. That's a very sort of selfish way to think about it. It's not right. Because it's not right, you ought to do something about it or say something about it. And yeah, it's not. You gotta if technology in the right hands can solve a lot of these problems, technology in the right hands can bring us anonymous speech and solve a lot of societal problems and shine sunlight. Sunlight is the best disinfectant, and technology is one way to shine the sunlight in places where it needs to be shown in order to remove corruption and have a well-running democratic society. Otherwise, the corruption will just fester and grow, and that sort of supplants a democratic society. And that's just very bad.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to something that's kind of similar. Now, this Microsoft case, it's still going on where the Department of Justice has said, Microsoft, you operate in the USA. There's some emails from some people in Ireland that are on your Ireland server, and they belong to us now. So we've talked about this a while back. Basically, the idea from the Department of Justice is that any company that operates on U.S. soil has to give the Department of Justice anything the Department of Justice wants, regardless of where it is in the world. So this is strange because if Microsoft said no, even though the court said, Microsoft, you have to give this, Microsoft said no. Because Microsoft is like, we have to look at the precedent this is going to set for the rest of the world. And let's just imagine for a second, if China were to say the same thing to us, people would freak out. If this happens, it's going to set a precedent where any country can come over and be like, listen, you guys have an office in Germany, and there's some stuff on some US servers. It belongs to us now because your company also operates in Germany. That's, there's no outcome yet. They're still duking it out, but
well, two judges so far has said Microsoft doesn't have a leg to stand on, and I'm really concerned about this because China could say the same thing. It's like, oh, if you want to do business in China, we need full access to everything. We have an example of Apple doing that with the source code to iOS so that Apple can inspect it for backdoors or whatever. But we already know that the intelligence community is capable of putting a backdoor in there that is so buried that it's basically undetectable. But the access to the source code would give the Chinese intelligence community the option to look for an unknown but exploitable problem in the source code. So it's kind of like it's not open, it's not exactly open, what's going on there. This isn't really a business decision for Microsoft. They're basically at their market cap in America. Their growth markets are outside of America. This is totally a dollars and cents decision for them because if they do this, they are going to lose a ton of ground internationally, and Linux will probably take over the international market pretty much immediately. There are already more severe staffing problems for programmers, especially in Europe, especially in Germany, for people that really know what they're doing with open source and software development and things like that, because of the specter that our intelligence community in America has created. And so Microsoft wants everybody to move stuff to the cloud. They want everybody to have the warm and fuzzies about the cloud. And, even as arrogant as Americans can be about that, if you're in another country and you're looking at this, it's like, I don't know that I'm going to do this. If you're a business and you're in an innovative industry, like you are, I don't know, a German wind turbine manufacturer, for example, and you're going to keep all your stuff in the cloud, it's like, well, do we really know that the American intelligence agency is not sharing that? There's not sort of an espionage going on, economic espionage or whatever, because that's the thing that actually happened. So what incentive is there going to be to buy any Microsoft products that live in the cloud? And the answer is there's not going to be any. It's already happened with Cisco. Cisco lost a ton of money already because it's like, wait a minute, there's a backdoor in Cisco stuff, and it's not really exactly those backdoors, just a weakness in an implementation of encryption is what was introduced. But that was enough to sort of upset the Apple cart. And so expect to see Apple, Microsoft, and Google fighting this kind of thing tooth and nail as publicly as possible. And I think that if the American people really figure out what's going on here, that they will stop it in public. But we've also got this secret court nonsense, which is problematic.
Speaking of backdoors and that sort of thing, let's check out this Android exploit that was, I guess, privately made known of in April, and then in July publicly disclosed. So this is a very interesting little Python script that makes an MP4 file, and then with that MP4 file, someone can basically get a terminal into your device that will allow them to turn on the microphone and turn on the video camera. All kinds of fun things. So this is actually happening. Now Google's been trying to press up, send out some updates. They've updated some of their apps, but that's just going to scratch the surface. One of the things that Apple does have the advantage, or does have an advantage when compared to Android, is the fact that Apple really controls their market. They control their devices. With Google, they're sending out these updates to different carriers, different vendors, and they're like, get these on the phone as quickly as possible. But that's not the way things always work.
This problem exists in Android 5, but is mitigated in Android 5 because Android 5 is hardened against this type of a problem. So in Android 5, this is not really an issue, but in Android 4, this is totally an issue. The bad thing here is that there are billions of Android devices, and they are not going to be patched because carriers do not give two craps. So Google is in an impossible situation here. That Google has not enabled over-the-air operating system updates is really completely insane. There was a guy that we talked to that said that the new thing with Android 5 was that the only part of the operating system that was not updatable over the air with Android 5 was the kernel, and everything else was a program that lived in Google Play. And so even though if you were stuck on Android 5 or 5.1, you could still have the latest version of Chrome, you could still have the latest version of whatever. I don't know if that strategy has been fully implemented. It doesn't seem like it, maybe, because we still have a lot of fragmentation on devices that are running Android 5 versus 5.1. But those Android devices that are running Android 4, they are screwed.
Yeah, I mean, there's not many ways to roll out updates to a gazillion different devices because each device is so different. But they could do it the way you just mentioned. But even then, getting the freaking carriers to push the updates is the most ridiculous and difficult thing. So
Google's got to take over that and take it out of the hands of the carriers. Carriers are not equipped to handle these kind of problems, period.
No, and with each generation, it seems like Google is taking a step in that direction, and I think that's their long plan. They're always playing chess while everyone else is playing canasta or whatever, but no one else even knows how to play canasta, but they're trying. But they're always playing the long game. So I think that's what they're doing right here.
Google being able to push out these kind of updates is also a bad idea from a privacy perspective because they can push out executable code to your phone at any time without warning, and you don't know what's going on. And so then you'll have to run another version of Android that is maybe a little more locked down or maybe a little weirder. It's kind of a catch-22.
Let's just make our own phone. I mean, let's just do it. Every time I read something like this, and then there's the different devices that come out, but nothing is totally secure. So let's just make our own. I don't know. So we can have our own little devices in our pocket. We'll make like 3 of them, and that's it. And then we'll have 3 or 4 of them in the world, and we'll be the only ones safe and secure. Anyway, speaking of carriers, Verizon, their 5G, that they might start rolling that out in 2017. The article here says that it is faster than Google Fiber. Yes, in a perfect controlled laboratory environment without any other activity on it, theoretically, well, actually provably, it can be faster than a gigabit. However, this is the real world, and this is also wireless technology. So let's put it into perspective. It's not going to be that. It's going to be freaking fast, but it's not going to be, in the real world faster than Google Fiber. But yeah, that's pretty interesting that they're going to be rolling it out that quickly. And I wonder about the rest of the world. When are they going to be able to take advantage of it? And I don't want to have to switch to Verizon. That would be the last thing I do for 5G. I'm sure 5G will roll out with other companies as well, but it's just coming out ahead of schedule. They said not until 2020, but nice.
We talked about this a little bit last week, but the reality is that Verizon 5G is faster than Google Fiber, like 802.11 AC is faster than gigabit Ethernet, only in very, 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 very controlled circumstances.
Mm-hmm. Let's check out what's going on with the FBI. That's always fun, right? James Comey, the director of the FBI, he's telling criminals that Tor and the dark web are not going to help them hide from his agents. So, I mean, to me, what that says is not necessarily that they totally cracked everything. We know that they've compromised Tor, and there's a lot of people out there that still keep talking about Tor as if it's the most secure thing in the world. No, it's not. People get caught all the time for doing whatever things using Tor. The best way not to get caught is to stop doing stupid stuff on the internet. That's it. If you don't want to get caught, stop doing stupid stuff, man. Like why? I mean, why do you need to order drugs on the internet? Stop ordering drugs on the internet, people. It's bad for you. Anyway, that's I don't know why I start preaching to people. Nobody cares. They're going to do drugs if they want to do drugs. I'm not going to be able to stop them. I'll come to your house and kick you in the face if you do meth again. How do you like that? All right, where were we? So yeah, it basically, to me, they're just saying, I'm not sure if they've actually cracked everything. I'm sure there's going to be some Tor traffic that gets by them, but they are watching the dark web. This is also going to be an article that is going to get thrown onto the news and that sort of thing, and the dark web is going to get another mark against it, as it, it's the new video game violence. The dark web, it's evil. It's the dark side of the web. Most of the internet happens to be the dark web. Most databases, dark web. Most everything that runs in the background on the web, dark web. Most of the internet is the dark web. And it is strong.
The dark web just means that search engines can't easily index it, or search engines don't index it, or search engines can't index it because the search engines are physically not connected to the networks that they're running on. And interestingly, but related, .onion, I think it's .onion, as a top-level domain name was approved for special purpose use for this kind of thing, which is interesting because .onion will be an actual real top-level domain. But the main reason is not for DNS purposes. The main reason is for SSL. So this is going to be an interesting experiment with SSL. SSL, secure sockets layer, like things for encryption. We're going to use SSL not for encryption, not necessarily, although it'll be handy, but for identification, so that whenever there's a website .onion, you can verify that it's the website that you expect it to be .onion. Because of the SSL certificate, you will remember the SSL certificate that you saw the last time you visited it, and if the SSL certificate is the same, then you know it's the site you expect. And if the SSL certificate changes, then you know it's different. And so I think that the SSL certificates are going to be run by a certificate authority that hands them out for free. So that's going to be interesting. That's going to change the dynamic, and it's interesting to see that kind of infrastructural support on something like Tor. Although I'm really like SSL providers, certificate authorities is a central authority, and so I sort of question whether or not that could be surreptitiously compromised as well. So,
shall we talk about some hardware? This has been a heavy episode, guys. Hope you guys were.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I've rambled a lot. I had a really bad allergy attack earlier, and I'm on meds, so you got to look over me.
And I've got like a migraine. I wasn't going to complain about it, but I'm seeing triple right now. So, but we got to that whole like deep, talk a little while ago about security, Windows 10, and the Google and the deep implications and all that sort of thing, and then society and Stalin, and we got into all kinds of stuff I didn't expect to get into. Anyway, let's lighten up a little bit and talk about some hardware and how the government's going to use it against you. I'm joking. Let's talk about some.
Well, no. Hardware. I think our sunlight argument goes back to Windows 10. If Windows 10 is what it's doing is not that bad, show us what it's doing. Don't encrypt it. I mean, Windows, it's like, oh, I need to phone home 35 times a day because I'm sending some cool stuff. All right, fine. Show us what it's doing. Don't actually like obfuscate it and make it weird and put it under these weird blanket EULA things. Show us exactly what it's doing. We need to know. We want to know. Sunlight is the best disinfectant.
The problem with that is like, well, we can't show you guys that because then you'd realize what we were doing and you'd freak out,
Well, therein lies the problem.
We don't want anyone to freak out now, do we? All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at this announcement from Seagate. They're saying that in about 10 years, they're going to have 100 terabyte hard drives. These are standard spinning disks, and here's what they're going to do. They're going to do this by using a laser to heat a tiny spot on the platter surface. And what that does is that changes the magnetic properties, which changes the density, and it cools almost instantly because they're heating such a tiny little spot. So as the laser moves around, they're going to have to be a little bit thicker at first, they said. So they're not going to get wider, they're going to get thicker. They won't be standard 3.5-inch form factor. But yeah, it'll heat the drive, add way more data to that one spot than normally is allowed, and then keep on moving, or normally is allowed at I guess standard temperatures. So very interesting.
What time would you say it is?
Around 30.
No. Try again.
I don't know.
Hammer time.
Oh, I wish that
Hammer.
I wish that song actually went that way. I wish it was like, stop. What time would you say it is? I do not know. It is hammer time. And then that's the British version. What time is it, good chap? I am not aware. I do not know. I've broken my watch. For it is hammer time.
If it's any consolation, that's how I hear it in my head. It's heat-assisted magnetic recording. So the laser does the heat thing, and it's hammer time.
That's the science behind this, is that it's hammer time. All right, let's talk about the AMD Radeon R9 Nano. So we went over this a little bit last week, and we weren't sure how the performance is going to be. And it looks to be maybe 5 to 15% slower than the Fury. The Fury X, that is. So not that bad. It's actually doing okay. It's almost flagship performance in a very, very small form factor. And depending on the game that you benchmark, the scores go up and down. But I always bring up the PC Perspective article because they do the most ridiculous. Actually, these benchmarks are almost too much for me. Sometimes I just want to see a couple numbers and make sure the frame times are not okay. If you want to do some deep research, they go in and do this. We've done this on a couple of our videos, but the time that they put into this is pretty crazy.
It does take an insane amount of time to do this kind of thing. And AMD was, that was part of the reasoning that AMD had. AMD, the Roy from AMD had a few acrimonious tweets when things sort of got intense with like people that are used to getting stuff from AMD, didn't have a chance to look at it. And he's like, oh, you guys are, anti-AMD or whatever, I guess. I don't know. It's sort of drama. But the bottom line is that the R9 Nano is a very niche product. It is a very tiny card for a very tiny form factor. The only thing that's a real head scratcher on this, and it's not exactly a head scratcher, I mean, it kind of is, but it's not, is that this is the perfect thing for an ultra compact, small form factor home theater PC. It does not have HDMI 2.0. And as of right now, as of the making of this, it is unobtainable to obtain a DisplayPort to HDMI 2.0 adapter. And so if AMD could have, flexed their muscle, because I'm sure they could do this, and included a DisplayPort HDMI 2.0 adapter, or built in a fourth DisplayPort on the card, and then had the adapter built into the card for HDMI 2.0, done something like that, that would be better, because the very narrow niche here, a significant percentage of those people, I think, would be looking for HDMI 2.0 to be able to hook up to televisions, 4K televisions, 60 hertz, 120 hertz 3D. American televisions don't have DisplayPort. It's a problem. It's a real problem. But in the grand scheme of things, there are worse problems that you can have. I mean, in terms of like performance and stuff, it does perform really well for what it is. And it is somehow manages to stay at 175 watts, which is surprising because, I mean, let's not forget the Fury X is a 275 watt card. So the power management on this has been tweaked because the power consumption at 175 watts, I mean, it delivers the performance that it does at 175 watts. And so are you telling me that it takes another 100 watts to go up 5-10% in performance? I don't think that's true. And if that is true, then these are super cherry bend Fury X parts, maybe, that could overclock like crazy. Or maybe there's going to be a software update for the Fury X that enables way better power management, so it'll actually lower the TDP less than 275 watts, and we could see a significant bump. I don't know. I mean, that's a large part of the reason why I think the 980 Ti is as overclockable as it is because it's got really good power management, and so it's able to basically go to sleep, and by going to sleep, it can dissipate a lot more heat during the points where it's actually woken up to do stuff. And so it's like, I'm going to get insanely hot for a few microseconds, then I'm going to be asleep for a few microseconds, then I'm going to be insanely hot again. And that type of thing maybe is what's happening in the Nano that's not happening in the Fury X. I don't know, I'm just making up stuff. But the Fury X actually does perform really well and is tiny, but it has a few niggles.
I don't know. For me, it's something that I really want to put into the ITX rig as quickly as possible because, I mean, look at Battlefield 4. It's 26% faster than the 970, the GTX 970 DC Mini. That's about the same size. I think the Nano may be smaller. But yeah, the other thing that Ryan notes here, we don't have one of these in the studio yet, but Ryan noted that there was quite a bit of cable whine. So that's also like, why is there a cable whine? AMD, why? Could you fix that, please? So I noticed some cable wind in some of the other Fury products as well that I tested. It wasn't terrible, but at certain games when the frame rate got like above 150, 160, then the cable wind was pretty perceivable. Anyway, interesting product. I think we'll have to get one of these and play with it. Maybe grab one. I don't know. Let's take a look at Canon's 250 megapixel sensor. This sensor is pretty ridiculous because this is not something that's just designed for science. They're considering using it in one of their SLR cameras. And 250 megapixels, for example, they said could see an airplane 11 miles away, and they were able to zoom in and clearly read the lettering on the airplane 11 miles away. Now, let's talk about the problems with 250 megapixels on a regular size sensor. This is actually going to be smaller than I'm sorry, wrong thing on the screen. Actually going to be smaller than a full frame sensor, but a little bit bigger than APS-C format. Now, once you get the pixels that small, they have a higher native ISO. So if some of you guys are wondering why your pictures on your cell phone are so grainy, well, it's like, well, if your cell phone's got like one of these crazy 19, 20 megapixel cameras, yeah, you're going to get really big images, but there's all this noise from the ISO being so high. So, you know, even at lower ISOs, it's going to generate more noise. You need larger pixels to have a lower native ISO. I mean, there's a lot more science into it. I could probably make a ton of special videos just on what goes into cameras, and that's sort of something that I get into cameras probably more than even some hardware. But you know, there's plenty of interesting future applications for this, like the Litro camera, the camera that just captures all of that light information. Well, they could use a sensor like this, and you know, even if they're cutting the native sensor of you know, from the resolution down 90%, that's still a 25 megapixel image. So that's still a ton of, you know, it's still a ton of information. And the Litro camera, if you guys haven't seen it, allows you to take a picture. It captures all the raw information from the scene, all the raw light information, basically capturing the information of where all the photons are. And then you are able to focus after the fact. It's kind of cheating, but it's interesting as well. You can do some pretty interesting artistic things with that. And then, of course, this could be used in several different scientific applications. But yeah, 250 megapixels in a standard small sensor is kind of ridiculous. If we could just figure out how to fix the noise problem, then we'll be onto something really amazing. And Sony's been doing some really cool things about you know fixing the noise problem. Some of their sensors are unbelievable, but then again, Sony is sacrificing overall megapixels or whatever. They're doing lower megapixels to give you something that produces amazing 4K video with hardly any noise, even at really high ISOs. So there's still a trade-off going on with the megapixels, the megapictures. Who says megapictures? I remember somebody says megapictures. I don't know. Anyway,
Canon needs to buy Panasonic, because Panasonic, like the GH3 and the GH4, their sensors are noisy. It's crazy. But
yeah,
the GH3 and the GH4 have some kind of hardware ASIC or an algorithm or something, and it really does a good job on CMOS noise. It is amazing. And the Canon, like the 5D Mark III and the 7D Mark II, if they had that algorithm, they would be the superior cameras. But they don't. The software sucks. The firmware sucks. And because of that, Panasonic GH3, GH4 is mind-blowing how much better they are.
You know what? I hope Canon doesn't buy them. I mean, I've always used Canon, and then when I started using Panasonic, I was like, oh, I like this. I like the functionality of this quite a bit better than the Canons. From a lot of, I mean, I always just use alternate firmware like Magic Lantern or something on Canon because I wanted the Canon stuff. Always feels to me like they nerf it or they cripple it just so they can sell their more expensive stuff. And I don't.
Correct.
That's not good for the consumer.
No.
So it's not cool, man. We made this amazing thing. It can do all this stuff, but you can't use it to do all that stuff because we have something else that's way more expensive that does all that stuff. Canon, come on. Yeah. All right, let's take a look at Glenn Keane here. I'm just going to tell you guys, if you're interested in, I guess, the idea of being able to draw in 3 dimensions using the HTC Vive, check out this video here. Glenn Keane is one of the animators behind Aladdin, Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, and some of those classic Disney movies that a lot of you guys grew up on. But here he is using the HTC Vive to draw. Let me go forward. There we go. He is, he's got the headset on. He's in a 3D world and he's drawing in 3 dimensions. So that's a pretty interesting application idea. I'm not sure if the devices are accurate enough to be used for professional or even actually using this on a production. But who knows? I mean, this is also, this is the first time we've seen something like this. Where is this going to go in the future? In the future, are we going to have artists making movies like Toy Story and stuff, and maybe there's 2 or 3 guys wearing headsets or wearing glasses in a room, walking around, creating the scene instead of doing it on a computer, using devices to manipulate a 3D world in a 2D, on a 2D plane like your computer screen. I'm thinking maybe 10, 15 years in the future, we'll actually see that. We'll see 3 or 4 guys making the next Pixar movie, making the next DreamWorks, making the next small budget, whatever, who knows, in a room, creating things. I'm going to go over here and create the background or whatever. Okay, I'm going to put the stuff in play over here, get the main characters ready. I think we'll start seeing some stuff like that. And it could also change the speed at which things are made. Who knows? Or fast prototyping. Technology's cool, man. Let's just do cool stuff. All right. What's next up on the menu today? Let's see here.
My fantasy here is that amateur filmmakers will be able to choose from a library of actors and then have a script acted out and rendered in real time. So think Unreal Tournament Engine 4, except you go to M. Night Shyamalan and you get the script, and then you go on Actor Hub 2.0 or whatever, and you download the actors or you license the actors for that performance, and then you get the computer to render it using their voice and stuff. It would be amazing. I mean, can you imagine how much fun you could have with old scripts like that? It's like take Ghostbusters and have Arnold Schwarzenegger play every part in the entire movie and then have the computer render that. It would just be amazing. I mean, Sigourney Weaver substituted with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Dan Aykroyd substituted with, it would be amazing.
Man. The MPAA is going to go insane. They're like, no, we don't want any derivative works. Can we just change copyright law so that no one can do anything other than ingest? Everyone should just sit at home and ingest. We don't want them to ever create anything. We create everything and we control everything, and they just suck it down. They ingest it. That's what we want.
I don't think that's where they were going with this technology, but they could do this with animations first, and then they could do, photorealistic movies, and that would be a whole genre of technology. I mean, can you imagine sitting down to watch the Lord of the Rings movie with every character as Danny DeVito, or being able to pick, it's like, well, basically every character
these things. That's an abomination. I don't want that in my head. Now I have to think about that.
Well, it's like maybe you could have Gandalf played by, I don't know, somebody clever and interesting, something like Barack Obama. He'd be in the library. It's like Obama is Gandalf. And then everybody else is, that would be amazing. I think that would be
Barack Obama. Y'all think you're going to pass here? Well, not going to do it. Not going to pass. I can't do a Barack Obama. I can kind of do a Bill Clinton, but I've forgotten how to do it, though.
Clinton as 60-year-old Clinton as Gandalf. That'd probably be pretty interesting.
Why are you asking me? Hillary's her own woman. She can do whatever she wants, okay? I'm doing bad impersonation. That's the bad impersonation hour. How about other presidents? This is me doing Bob Dole. I'm Bob Dole. That's the end of it. He's not a president. Anyway, lightsabers. How about that? Someone should build one of these and come hit me in the head for all those terrible impersonations. So physicists are showing how they're saying molecules could be made out of light, but that's not entirely accurate. You can't really make molecules out of photons, but they are figuring out some new ways to organize photons. So, of course, let's just make an article about how lightsabers are going to be possible soon. Because that's what makes me click on this. Damn it, they've got me. But anyway, there's plenty of other
These photons
implications.
are so high energy that, blah, blah, blah. The thing with high energy photons is that it's really hard to, really what we need these for are weapons to make an air force obsolete, because there will come a point in the not too distant future where a country's air force is basically irrelevant, because the radar and imaging technology is to the point that anything larger than a bird can be imaged from the ground and shot out of the sky with a laser. Missiles, all sorts of ground to air stuff, all of that, basically taken out with a laser from the ground. So this kind of technology is important for that kind of thing because we need more energy. We need the photons to convey more energy than they do. I mean, lasers that are powerful enough to melt an engine block from 5 miles away barely exist today, but they also barely work and they're not really very energy efficient. This kind of technology will pave the way for that. So these guys are probably working off of DARPA grants, or they're very close to being able to get a DARPA grant, but they're going to go the lightsaber way to be like, hey, look, it's cool. But the reality is that the weapons aspect of this is going to be really valuable.
Yeah, it's going to be some guy with a slight southern draw. That's who's going to play him in the movie, going and be like, yeah, this is cool, guys, but how fast can we... Oh, that's the bad accent. The general's always going to be like, y'all, this is cool, but how are we going to be able to blow shit up with this? That's what I want to know. And then they'll give him a grant. That's how it plays out in the movies every damn time. Why does every general have a southern accent in every movie? Are there no generals from the north? They just don't exist in movies?
You've given me an idea. Lord of the Rings, with every character as that guy from Sling Blade.
that guy, you mean the guy that Billy Bob Thornton plays himself, the biscuits and mustard.
Y'all shall not pass.
Oh god, I want to see all the melodramatic scenes. You know, like the scenes where where Frodo and Sam you're just like, are they gonna kiss or what's happening here? Oh no, they're just splitting up and going different directions. But I'm pretty sure they're gonna kiss. I want to see those played out by Billy Bob Thornton as the character from Sling Blade. Well, I'm going to go this way. I'm going to miss you, Frodo. Got some elven biscuits here.
He would probably make a convincing Azog the Defiler.
I'm going to move on right now. That's what's going to happen. Brain activity. So why did I say it that way? It's probably whatever I took to get rid of this headache. So anyway, this is a thing. It's not a new thing, but you can already use neural interfaces to control like a prosthetic arm or something. And it's been kind of clunky at first, and it requires a lot of learning. So a team in Switzerland is working on some ways to make it much easier. And right now they're saying that they are making it much easier. It's basically they're improving the software. That's kind of all I really wanted to touch on in this, is that it's getting easier for us to give someone a prosthetic something, arm, leg, kneecap. I don't know, is it a prosthetic kneecap? And then your brain will be able to better interface and better control it. So yeah, let's move on to the Elon Musk thing. Unless you want to say anything, I think it ties in better with this, right?
Yeah, no, the Elon Musk thing is what I have in mind for. All
right.
And then yeah.
Yeah, so Elon Musk, they're talking about the Oculus and that sort of thing, and again, always looking at the bigger picture and what the future holds. Elon Musk says, I see a world in which once we get to photorealism or whatever, where people just sit around and we physically move less. Now, couple that together. Wendell, I'll let you take it from here. We can couple that together with what we just talked about.
Yeah, so can you imagine a future? It's like right now, it's like, oh, everybody's glued to their cell phones and they're doing everything on the internet. Can you imagine a future where we're just brains in a jar? I mean, we get to a point where, the encephalograph or whatever it is not just about prosthetics. It's about having the electronics wired directly into your brain. At some point, it will be like the Matrix, where the thing that you're experiencing is really just stimuli and signals from your nervous system that are artificially stimulated. At some point, probably not in my lifetime, but at some point, assuming that we don't blow ourselves up and society comes to a screeching halt.
I always have to throw that in there, assuming we don't destroy everything.
At some point, the technology will come about, and it'll be interesting to see when that happens. And this is the beginnings of the technology to do this. And so if you want to right now today, there are toys you can buy that read your brainwaves, and they're very primitive. They're like the animatronic cat ears are really popular in Japan. It's like these cat ears you can wear, and it has like a little sensor that sits on your forehead, and depending on your mood and a whole bunch of other things, it changes the ears, like the ear orientation. And so it's like cat ears, but it's a prosthetic kind of.
Yeah,
and
Kane
so you can do
PAX a couple of years ago. Kane put those things on, and he was like, yeah.
Why is this? They're really popular in Japan for what because Japan. So
because of Japan.
yeah, and there's a version of Tux Racer. There's a project called the Open EEG. I used to be on the mailing list. I built one. It was a lot of fun to play with. And there's a version of Tux Racer where you're a penguin sort of racing down a hill, and you can use the encephalograph as a control mechanism. So you can actually learn to steer the penguin left or right using only your brain waves. I think there's some video games that do this now as well, with varying levels of success. So the technology is only going to improve. It's only going to be developed more. So not only will you be able to control a prosthesis, but you would be able to control a simulated environment and be able to have, fully immersive 3D, fully immersive whatever, to the point that, you would be hard pressed to tell the difference between a brain in a jar and actual reality. So it's going to be interesting to see when that happens.
Yeah, and I mean, the big difference between this and like The Matrix, I think this is going to be more like the movie Wall-E, the old Disney movie. I think it'll be more like that because it's going to be self-induced. It's not going to be, whatever keeping us living in some sort of an illusion. And one other interesting thing here, if you guys watch this, Elon Musk at the end alludes to the fact that he may believe that what we are seeing and what we are experiencing is not actually real. We may actually be inside of a simulation or something at that point. So it's kind of interesting. I mean, he might have been doing it tongue-in-cheek, of course, but also there's science that's just for another video. Let's just move on and talk about what Elon Musk said about Mars. And we can get into the whole holographic universe theory, which is kind of weird, but interesting to read about.
We're not qualified to talk about the holographic universe theory, but it's interesting to imagine.
Yeah, and don't go read books on it, because then you'll start feeling like nothing is real and nothing matters anymore, and you'll sit in your room and go, "Is this real?" for like days and days. Don't do it. I mean, you can if you want to, but just it may mess with your perspective on things. So Elon Musk, this is another funny interview here, where he's declared a supervillain by Colbert. Anyway, he's talking about ways that we could make Mars a more hospitable planet. And the quick solution, he said, is to nuke the poles. We just need to heat it up. That's the thing. We need to heat the planet up so that it can become a planet more like ours. Just got to heat that thing up. And we get an atmosphere going. But first, when we go there, we'll have to live in these giant domes. And but yeah, if we nuke it, I don't know, what do you think? Should we nuke Mars, nuke the poles, get it warmed up a little bit? Maybe get some of that water flowing
again? Nuking the poles
again?
sounds like a good idea. I think we ought to do that. It would be cool. Yeah. I mean, at this point, I don't know, maybe we need one more robot to make sure that there's no microbial life on Mars, or maybe there is microbial life on Mars. Yeah. I don't know.
There's a whole colony of humans that are living under the surface because they went there 100,000 years ago, and then all the stuff from their civilization is now gone. We don't even know about it. We're gonna find an artifact or something. But they're all living there under the surface, and then we're always worried about killing the human race here, but we're going to nuke them first. This is all
I just think it would be a lot of fun. I mean, having Mars be habitable with a nice atmosphere, like with an Earth-like atmosphere and that kind of thing, it would be cool. Although, I'm not sure if heating up the poles will be enough. It's really important that Mars also have a magnetosphere to shield us from various kinds of radiation, and I'm not sure that heating the poles will do that by itself. Maybe.
I don't know. I kind of want to climb Olympus Mons. Biggest mountain in the, I guess the biggest mountain that we know about so far in our solar system anyway. All right, moving right along here, let's take a look at some PC gaming stuff. Some good news here. Dragon's Dogma is coming to PC. It's a large, somewhat open world game that's, some people call it the button mashing version of Skyrim, but I have not played this, so I can't make any of these statements. I just know it looks pretty decent. I don't know. I'm always up for another cool RPG, and when I first saw this game, I was always frustrated that it was not coming out on PC. So, yeah, announced for PC. More stuff on PC. Final Fantasy V is coming to Steam on September 24th. I am not a Final Fantasy player at all, so I'm just saying that because I don't have any knowledge of Final Fantasy V, and I'm not going to sound like an authority and whatever, but I think it's important to mention things that our audience enjoys, and I think there's some people out there that may enjoy this. I don't know. So there you have it. I don't know. Is this something that you're going to play? I think Kane might play the Final Fantasy V. Looks like they've improved the graphics. Does it say that they've improved the graphics?
I'm not sure. I think I played this briefly, but I don't think I
think
really...
this was Japanese only Final Fantasy V, I think. And maybe you can get the import.
Yeah, I don't think I played this until later. I don't know. I definitely fell in love with Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 4. So...
Yeah, only one I ever played was Mystic Quest. And it was one of those things where like I was really, really ill. I was like had a terrible flu and I was home from school. And I was like, I rented a game and I rented that game. And then I couldn't tell if it was better just to lay there on the floor and be sick or play that game. It was so bad. I was like, I don't know. I don't want to just lay here and dwell on, how sick I am and lay here and be like, oh, I can't breathe. This sucks. My throat hurts. But at least when I was playing that, I wasn't dwelling on it, but it was almost as bad. All right. Steam's return policy. 14 days. You have 14 days, and you have to have played the game no more than 2 hours. And then you can return the game on Steam. And so the guys at PC Gamer, they reached out to a bunch of indie developers, and they said, what do you think about this? And it seems almost unanimous that the indie developers are for this. They say it's okay. 2 hours... 2 hours is okay, I think. I don't know. Some people are arguing that, certain games like Gone Home and some of the games that you can complete in around 2 hours or, maybe fewer than 2 hours, they're saying that that's not fair. People are just going to buy the game, beat it, and return it within 14 days. And I don't know. Those people to me are in the same category as, pirates. People who just steal stuff with no regard for the developer's well-being, no regard for like, hey, these guys are indie, they're not going to be able to eat now. They don't think about that. They're just selfish bastards. So maybe that's going to happen, but I think it's going to be at a rate that's pretty low. I don't know. I think it's reasonable for returning digital goods. A couple hours of use. No signs of wear and tear, right? I don't know.
I think the argument here seems to be that short games, indie developers with short games, but I don't think I buy it because I think 2 hours is reasonable, especially with technical problems, especially with the upcoming Linux support and the whole Steambox thing. I think 2 hours is reasonable. I think you could probably beat a game like Stanley Parable.
That's what I said.
That in 2 hours.
Yeah, Stanley Parable, and there's several other games that you can beat, within 2 hours. But
make a game that's more than 2 hours because then it's really a movie. Maybe it should be an hour per $10 or something. I don't know.
Yeah, there's other things that have been proposed. Most of the indie developers here have been okay with it, though. So, I don't know. I think if the developers want change, they should propose some solutions. But mostly the developers have not said we need change. It's just a lot of people in the comments saying, this is weird. But people will always complain. So, I'm not for or against this. I'm still going to buy most of my games on Good Old Games if they're available there. So, yeah. I just like the lack of DRM, but every now and then you got to grab something on Steam if it's the only place to buy it. All right, that's pretty much everything for today. I'm gonna go take a nap. My brain is like frazzled.
It's kind of nap time, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think I've rambled that much, but yeah, I've got like a terrible, strange headache. Anyway, so yeah, I'm gonna install Linux on this machine. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm sick of this. This machine automatically updated itself to Windows 8.1. It was Windows 8, and this is the rig that we use for capture. So I was like, you know what? It's Windows 8. It's working perfectly. I'm not going to touch anything. I'm just going to use it. I just use it for up in Broadcaster. But one day it forced itself to update to Windows 8.1. I didn't know that it even did that. And then it was like, oh, let's check your serial number. Oh, you've got one of those Russian serial numbers. Whoops. So. You guys may see the activate Windows in the bottom corner. I'm going to install Linux on this thing because I am not putting Windows 10 on this. Yeah, because why not? It'll do exactly what we want for this. It should have been on here already. But I think if my headache goes away, that's what I'm going to do tonight. And you guys can in the comments throw what version you think I'm going to put on there, and we'll see who's right. I'm just going to be curious. Throw them on our website. Just let me know what version you guys think I'm going to be putting on here. And thanks to Rocat for sponsoring this episode. And I actually quite enjoy their mouse. I'm actually using one of their mice right here. I'm using it because it's got a gazillion buttons on it. And it's handy for switching all the different scenes and that sort of thing. This is the tie-on. But yeah, oops, I pushed the button. I use it to, you guys maybe see me clicking all over the place. So, I mean, it's a thing that has enough buttons for an MMO mouse, but a lot of people ask that. This is not part of their advertisement that they've paid cash money for. This is just me saying this is the mouse that I've been using here because of all the buttons and the placement of them. Other than that, I don't love it for gaming, but I like it. Anyway, it's the end of the episode. See you guys next week. I'll let Wendell do the final salutation.
See you next week, probably. Maybe sooner, because I've got a lot of crap I've got to put out again, which I actually put out a lot of stuff this week, so there you go.
Oh yeah, before we leave, guys, go watch the factory tour. I want to know what you guys think of it. It's one of our first, and I'm kind of happy about it. And we have a factory tour of Lee coming up. So you saw there, they were doing everything by hand. Lee does everything with ridiculously fancy, machines, robotics, all that kind of stuff. So it'll be like two completely different experiences that both produce a similar product. But check out that video and stay tuned for the Lee video. We kind of got the stuff down to more of a science, so it'll be easier for me to edit that video.
A similar product in terms of like how high end it is what you mean, I think.
Well, they're both cases. I mean, the price points on the Deep Cool stuff and the Lee stuff are different enough that the Lee usually should have higher end products, but not to say the Deep Cool. Some of their high end stuff is actually quite nice as well. But there's two different categories, but they're still cases. So yeah, and one's mostly aluminum, one's usually steel and plastic. So a little different, but they're still cases, and you guys will get to see how different the manufacturing process is between those two. All right, that's pretty much it. Bye.
See ya.